Rifle on a doorknob. On July 26, 1987, a sheriff drove to a mobile home near Kaplinger Mills, Missouri. He was investigating a burglary report in the area. It was a routine call, the kind he had handled hundreds of times before. The property sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by trees and farmland. Nothing about the scene suggested danger. He pulled up to the residence around 2 in the afternoon. The mobile home looked abandoned. No vehicles in the driveway, no lights on inside. He stepped out of his patrol car and walked toward the front door. Standard procedure. He would knock, announce himself, and check if anyone was home. What he did not know was that the property owner had installed a deadly trap. A .30 caliber rifle had been rigged directly to the inside doorknob. A length of wire connected the knob to the trigger mechanism. The weapon was positioned at chest height, aimed straight at the door. Anyone who turned the handle from outside would pull the wire. The rifle would fire automatically. The owner had set this device deliberately. It was designed to kill whoever entered uninvited. He reached the door. He knocked twice and identified himself as sheriff. No response. He waited. Still nothing. Following protocol, he reached for the doorknob to check if the door was unlocked. His hand gripped the metal handle. He turned it. The mechanism activated instantly. The wire pulled taut. The trigger engaged. The rifle discharged a single round through the wooden door. The bullet tore through the thin barrier at point-blank range. It struck him directly in the head. He collapsed on the doorstep. The impact killed him immediately. There was no time to react, no warning, no chance to step back. One moment he was doing his job. The next, he was gone. When backup officers arrived nearly an hour later, they found his body at the entrance. The door was still closed. Inside, the rifle remained wired to the knob, smoke still lingering in the barrel. The trap had worked exactly as intended. The cow attack. On March 31, 2011, a deputy responded to a car accident on a rural road in Smith County, Texas. A vehicle had struck a cow. The animal was lying injured in the middle of the roadway. His job was to direct traffic around the scene until animal control could arrive. He pulled up to the location just after sunset. The cow was large, easily weighing over 1,000 pounds. It lay on its side, breathing heavily but appearing unable to move. The impact from the vehicle had clearly caused serious injuries. He assessed the situation and determined the animal posed no immediate threat. He positioned his patrol car with the lights flashing and began directing the few vehicles that passed by. The cow remained motionless behind him. Everything seemed under control. It was a straightforward assignment. Keep traffic flowing safely until help arrived to remove the injured animal. He stood in the road with his back partially turned to the cow. He focused on the approaching headlights, waving cars around the scene. He had no reason to watch the animal closely. It appeared incapacitated. Without warning, the cow suddenly rose to its feet. Despite its injuries, the animal moved with shocking speed. It charged directly at him. Over 1,000 pounds of muscle and bone accelerating across the pavement. The cow struck him with brutal force. The impact launched him into the air. He came down hard, landing headfirst on the asphalt. Dazed and disoriented, he tried to move. Before he could get up, the cow attacked again. It trampled him, its hooves striking his body repeatedly. The animal gored him with its head, driving into his torso and limbs. Other motorists witnessed the attack and called for help. Paramedics arrived and rushed him to a hospital. He had sustained severe head trauma and massive internal injuries. For 4 days, doctors worked to save him. His brain had been damaged in the fall. His organs were failing from the internal bleeding. On April 4th, 2011, the deputy died from the injuries inflicted by the cow. The fake 911 call. On May 22, 1970, a woman called 911 in St. Paul, Minnesota. She reported a medical emergency at a residential address. The dispatcher sent a patrolman and his partner to the scene. It appeared to be a routine call. Someone needed help. The officers responded immediately. The patrolman and his partner arrived at the address shortly after midnight. The neighborhood was quiet. Streetlights illuminated a typical residential block. Nothing appeared unusual. The house matched the address given in the dispatch. He stepped out of the patrol car, while his partner remained at the vehicle momentarily to radio their arrival. He walked across the front yard toward the door. He followed standard procedure. Approach the residence, knock, identify himself as police, and assess the medical situation. He had no reason to suspect danger. Medical assists were common calls. What he did not know was that there was no medical emergency. The call was entirely fabricated. Across the street, hidden in darkness, a gunman waited with a rifle. He had been positioned there specifically to kill a police officer. The woman's voice on the 911 recording was part of a calculated plan. Get an officer to that exact location. Get him in the open. Get him in the crosshairs. He reached the front walkway. He was 15 feet from the door. Exposed. Vulnerable. A single rifle shot cracked through the night. The bullet struck Sackett. He collapsed onto the lawn. His partner heard the shot and saw him fall but could not identify where the shooter was positioned. The gunman remained concealed across the street, already fleeing into the darkness. Backup units arrived within minutes. Paramedics attempted to save him, but the wound was fatal. He died at the scene. Investigators quickly determined the call was a hoax. No one at the address had requested help. No medical emergency existed. The entire incident was an ambush designed specifically to murder a police officer. The killer was later identified as a member of a radical group targeting law enforcement. He was eventually arrested, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. The bomb squad experts. On February 8, 1986, a detective and an officer were called to a garage in North Hollywood, California. 2 pipe bombs had been discovered inside. The detective and officer were the Los Angeles Police Department's top bomb technicians. Between them, they had decades of experience and had successfully defused hundreds of explosive devices. When a bomb was too dangerous for anyone else, they were the ones who handled it. They arrived at the scene in the early afternoon. The garage belonged to a residential property. Someone had reported the suspicious devices, and the area had been evacuated. They entered wearing protective gear and carrying their standard equipment. They had done this countless times before. Inside the garage, they found 2 pipe bombs. The devices were positioned side by side on a workbench. They appeared to be relatively straightforward constructions: metal pipes, end caps, visible wiring. The 2 men began their assessment using established protocols. They photographed the devices, examined the components, and discussed their approach to rendering them safe. What the officers could not see was a secondary mechanism. The bombs had been rigged with a sophisticated booby trap specifically designed to kill bomb technicians. A hidden trigger was built into the devices that would activate when handled using standard diffusing procedures. It exploited the exact methods experts like them would use. The 2 men worked methodically. They had their tools laid out. They communicated with each other in the technical shorthand of experienced professionals. Everything appeared routine. They began the diffusing process on the first device. The moment they made contact with the trigger mechanism, both bombs detonated simultaneously. The explosion was massive. The confined space of the garage amplified the blast. The walls shook. Windows shattered throughout the neighborhood. Smoke and debris erupted from the structure. The detective and officer were killed instantly. The 2 most experienced bomb technicians in the LAPD, men who had saved countless lives by defusing dangerous devices, were eliminated by a trap specifically engineered to defeat their expertise. Drowning by fellow officer. On April 22, 2009, an officer went out on Lake Allatoona in Georgia with a fellow SWAT team member. Both men were part of the same unit. They trusted each other with their lives on duty. That night, they took a boat out on the water. It should have been a routine evening between colleagues. What the officer did not realize was that his partner had been drinking heavily. The other officer was intoxicated as he operated the boat. The lake was dark. Visibility was limited. The boat moved at high speed across the water. Without warning, the vessel struck a pylon with brutal force. The impact threw both men violently. The first officer was launched into the cold water. He was injured from the collision, disoriented, and weighed down by his clothing and equipment. The dark water surrounded him. He struggled to stay afloat, to reach the surface, to find the boat. His partner remained in the damaged vessel, only feet away. He fought in the water. He could not overcome the combination of injury, equipment weight, and disorientation. He drowned while his fellow officer was mere yards from his position. But the partner did not call 911. He did not radio for help. He did not report the accident. Instead, he waited. For 90 minutes, he remained at the scene. He used that time to remove beer cans and bottles from the boat, evidence of his intoxication. He threw them into the lake. He cleaned the vessel. He prepared his story. Only after destroying the evidence did he finally contact authorities. When investigators arrived, he lied about the circumstance of the crash. He claimed he had not been drinking. He provided a false account of what happened. The investigation eventually uncovered the truth. Witness statements, forensic evidence, and inconsistencies in his story revealed what actually occurred. The officer had drowned while his drunk partner prioritized covering up his intoxication over calling for rescue. The partner was charged with vehicular homicide, boating under the influence, and tampering with evidence. He was convicted and sentenced to prison. The Samar Misencounter. On June 25, 2018, a unit of the Philippine National Police conducted operations in Samar, Philippines. The region was known for communist rebel activity. The officers were on patrol searching for insurgents who had been active in the area. They moved through dense jungle terrain where visibility was limited and enemy contact was always possible. At the same time, a unit from the Philippine Army was operating in the same region. They were under a different chain of command but had the same mission: hunt down communist rebels, secure the area. Both units were heavily armed and trained to engage hostile forces on site. Neither group knew the other was nearby. There had been no coordination between the police and military units, no communication about their respective positions, no shared operational plan. Both teams moved through the thick vegetation, weapons ready, scanning for threats. The The police unit spotted movement ahead through the trees. Armed men in tactical positions, in rebel territory. They assessed the situation quickly. Insurgents. The officers took cover and prepared to engage. The army unit saw figures moving through the jungle, armed individuals advancing in formation. They made the same assumption. Communist rebels. They raised their weapons. The first shots were fired. Both sides immediately returned fire. Automatic weapons erupted from multiple positions. The jungle filled with the sound of gunfire, shouting, and chaos. Each unit believed they were winning a firefight against the enemy. They advanced and retreated tactically, using cover, throwing grenades, emptying magazines. The battle continued for several minutes. Men on both sides fell wounded. The intensity increased. Then someone noticed the uniforms, the equipment, the wrong gear for rebels. Realization spread slowly through both units. These were not insurgents. These were government forces. The shooting stopped. When the smoke cleared, 6 police officers lay dead on the jungle floor. Multiple others were wounded. They had been killed by their own military. Friendly fire, not from rebel bullets, but from the Philippine army. The 6 men died because 2 allied units mistook each other for the enemy. Killed by lightning. On May 22, 2011, an EF5 tornado struck Joplin, Missouri. The storm was one of the most powerful ever recorded in the United States. It carved a path of destruction through the city, killing 161 people and leaving thousands injured. Buildings were reduced to rubble. Entire neighborhoods disappeared. The devastation stretched for miles. An officer was part of the emergency response. Law enforcement from across the region converged on Joplin to help with rescue operations and traffic control. The city was in chaos. Debris covered every street. Power lines lay across roads. Emergency vehicles struggled to navigate the destruction. The day after the tornado, on May 23rd, he was assigned to direct traffic at a critical intersection. Relief workers, ambulances, and supply trucks needed to move through the area. The work could not stop. Dark clouds still hung over the city. Thunder rumbled in the distance, rain began to fall, but the emergency operations continued. He stood at his post, waving vehicles through the intersection. Other officers and emergency workers were positioned at various points nearby. The weather worsened. The rain intensified. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by deep rolls of thunder, but there was too much work to do. The relief effort could not pause for a storm. Without warning, a bolt of lightning struck him directly. The flash was blinding. The crack of thunder was instantaneous and deafening. Officers nearby saw the strike. They saw him collapse to the ground. The smell of ozone filled the air. Smoke rose from where he had been standing. Paramedics rushed to him immediately. He was unconscious. His heart had stopped. They performed CPR and got him into an ambulance. At the hospital, doctors worked to stabilize him. He had suffered severe electrical burns. His heart rhythm was irregular. His brain showed signs of damage from the electrical current. For 11 days, he fought. His body tried to recover from the massive electrical trauma, but the injuries were too severe. On June 3, 2011, the officer died from the lightning strike. The Anarchist's bomb. On November 24, 1917, a suspicious package was discovered outside a church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A patrol officer found it on the front steps. It was wrapped in brown paper and appeared deliberately placed, given the era and rising anarchist violence targeting institutions across the country. Any unidentified package was treated as a potential threat. The officer followed protocol. Do not open it. Do not move it carelessly. Transport it to the central police station where detectives could examine it properly. The package was carefully loaded into a vehicle and driven downtown to headquarters. At the station, word spread that a suspicious device had been brought in for examination. 9 detectives gathered in a room to inspect the package. These were experienced investigators. They had dealt with suspicious items before. The package sat on a table in the center of the room. One civilian was also present, observing the examination. The detectives discussed the package. They studied its shape, its weight, the way it was wrapped. They looked for markings, addresses, or identifying features. This was standard investigative procedure. Determine what it was, where it came from, whether it posed a danger. What none of them knew was that the package contained a powerful bomb built by anarchists. 1917 was a period of intense anti-government violence. Anarchist groups across the United States were targeting police stations, government buildings, and law enforcement officers. This device had been specifically designed to kill investigators. It was engineered to detonate when examined. The detectives leaned in closer. They began to carefully unwrap the outer layer of paper. One of them started to open the package. The bomb detonated. The explosion was massive. The confined room amplified the blast. Fire and shrapnel filled the space instantly. The walls shook. The force tore through everything in the room. Smoke poured into the hallway. All 9 detectives were killed immediately. The civilian died as well. 10 people gone in a single moment, and the blast left the room destroyed. Bodies were scattered among the debris. It was the deadliest single incident in Milwaukee Police Department history. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.